We kick off this episode with a mining colony and two of its Yahoo miners ready to meet with some visitors.
I'm Captain Catherine Janeway. This is Commander Tuvok. We're from the Federation starship Voyager.
You idiot! You beamed down their stunt doubles! After the titles, quick effective teaser, always good sign. I can't believe it's not Janeway casually comments on things related to the Federation and Earth as a prelude to their trade business here. These guys are hoping for some dilithium. They have bolemite. But this Janeway says they don't have any need for that crap. But this Tuvok corrects her, saying that they can use that for omega therapy for the Orphans. If these guys push it, it'll probably be Orphans and their sick puppy, who also needs omega therapy. They agree to the trade, but that's when we get the idea. These are con artists impersonating the Voyager crew. The moment they get back up, Janeway takes off her wig to reveal a head so smooth, the only thing lice could do there is play air hockey on it. She throws it back on, though, when the aliens are ready to deliver, but when the time comes to beam down the dilithium, oh, there's this neutronic storm that we're really worried about. That'll interfere with the beaming and stuff. We'll have to leave, but we promise we'll return with our dilithium as soon as possible. I figure, about 9:30. Meanwhile, the real Janeway is dealing with problems of her own. The sonic shower malfunctions so badly it shatters the mirror. And that's just one example of things that are being screwed up on at least 9 decks. Luckily, Janeway has a scientific explanation for all this.
Gremlins.
I told you last week gremlins don't exist, and I took that as a personal challenge which I stand by. Now, help me replicate some rat meat and get a mallet. While they track down the latest malfunction, we turn to the place that always comes to mind when you think of things going all wrong, the mess hall. After a discussion that Tom and Harry mess with Tuvok's holodeck program again to give the Oracle some pajamas, Janeway stops by to announce that this malfunction has caused a problem with the replicator, which could make all of them sick. An irony, as usually it was the one thing you could count on to be safe around here. But for the first and last time, I guess we can't blame this food poisoning on Neelix.
Here. Well, that explains it.
Spoke too soon. Should have known they should have just rounded up the usual suspect. Odds are if something is destroying the ship, you can start with the person who poisoned it with cheese and gave it fleas once. If the ship catches fire, it's going to start in this room. And from Neelix attempting to make ice, I'm sure. It's one of Neelix's heating coils, and once again, something contaminated the whole ship from just one spot. One thing that he put in his kitchen. He got it in trade from a sister Dala and just plugged it in assuming that it would work just fine, rather than oozing slime all over and turning the ship into a haunted house attraction. Before Janeway has a chance to make him eat that thing, she gets called to the bridge by Chakotay because there's an angry alien on the screen and he's had enough of being yelled at. It's the head of the mine that got swindled, demanding the ore that fake Janeway promised, and refusing to accept identity theft as an answer. As the guy rants, he mentions the Orphans, which catches Janeway's interest, given that Sister Dala had brought up Orphans with Tom and Neelix. Janeway knows there's 2 types of people who bring up orphans all the time, con artists and her own victims, so she figures that she should look into this further. Neelix explains that he and Tom were searching for a fungus for the doctor. Everyone needs a hobby. When they came across members of some religion that's disturbed by their presence and laying it on thick. Not in a we'll burn you at the stake kind of way, more of a now we'll have to whip ourselves kind of way. Everything is forgotten, though, when they reveal that Neelix bears a striking resemblance to the Redeemer of Light. Live Fast and Prosper has a mixed reputation among fans, which I think comes from the fact that it is effective self-parody. As I said, 2 instances of Neelix's kitchen causing problems, so this time it happens due to the unlikely cause of an element of his stove. It's just a slight exaggeration of what we would expect, though, based upon past experience. Likewise, in these tunnels, they can't help but be reminded of sacred ground, with the compounded point of, you look like our deity. That's an eye-rolling, cheesy staple. But would we be surprised if it were real, given the other stuff that has happened on this show? One part in particular later on will really seal the deal, but let's get back to the swindle. First, they trick Neelix and Paris into trading supplies for that defective coil, to take care of the orphans, of course. Then she pumps Neelix for info on Voyager's crew. Finally, they get everyone to close their eyes during a blessing while her partner uses the supposed talisman around his neck to tap into and download the Delta Flyers database. This isn't even what I was just referring to, but you can again see what I mean. The whole database is that easy to download in a minute or two. But this is precisely the kind of thing that happens frequently on the show. Everyone is just used to their security being that terrible, including the audience. If Voyager was in the U.S. Navy, it'd be so crippled by Trojans, adware, and keyloggers that if World War III ever started, they'd be dropping depth charges on the Great Coral Reef. Meanwhile, the fake Voyager is working with another mark, convincing this guy that the Federation has a powerful military force. The Delta Flyers, they call their ship, is unimpressive and out of date, but the mothership Voyager is very advanced and just one of a massive fleet, with technology that they naturally share amongst its members. For the right admission fee, he can join the Federation and get all that help against his enemies. But Voyager's got orders to leave here for about 6 months, so it's either leap in now or else hope that he can survive until they return. Naturally, he quickly commits, and another sucker is fleeced. During the procedure, we continue to see that fake Tuvok is really into his role, constantly discussing Federation procedures and going off script in ways that could actually be harmful, from wanting to tour the mining facility, when they naturally want to get the hell out of there as fast as possible, to, in this case, waxing on about the Federation's purpose and the details of membership, details that would be contrary to their too-good-to-be-true approach. He genuinely enjoys being Tuvok, making him an amusing sort of fanboy, complete with his homemade costume there, the oversized pips and communicator and all that. This further contributes to the episode's impish winking at the camera. The alien is falling as in love with Star Trek as a die-hard fan would, wanting to believe he's a part of it all, too. Back on Voyager, Neelix and Paris are beating themselves up for being duped. Paris, of course, thinks of Harry as the gullible one and even comes right out and says it, so it bruises his ego to fall for the orphan story. Neelix feels he should have been better, too, but frankly, he's the most gullible person on the ship not named Harry Kim. And appropriately, he's gullible enough to think that he's not gullible, even while lamenting how gullible he was. He's like a rotting zombie who is convinced the only reason he doesn't smell like a rose is he hasn't changed his shirt. To try to prove that he isn't, he plans to swindle the Doctor in the old shell game, and the Doctor's eager to play.
If I win, you take 3 duty shifts in sickbay.
Huh? What did your patients ever do to you to deserve being treated by someone who would respond to a guy's worry about his angina with, "Well, I didn't even know you had one. Get those pants off and I'll see what I can do."
Where is it then? In your left palm.
On the other hand, it crystallizes how bad things are for the crew when Neelix drops slop on their tray and makes them sick. Then they stumble into sickbay, only to find Neelix is waiting for them, squealing because he can't undo the surgical clamp he's got dangling from his lip. What seems to be the problem? After Neelix has utterly failed to prove he's not a failure, Voyager finds the fake Delta Flyer, getting chewed out by that guy who joined the fake Federation over some crappy photon torpedoes they gave him, and the fact that it turns out his enemy has also joined the Federation. Whoopsie! Voyager shows up while the alien has them in a tractor beam, so Dala, the fake Janeway, calls up the alien claiming that it's the mothership come to save them. So soon the other two are fighting each other while they try to slip away. Seven's able to beam Dala to the brig before they escape, so Janeway can have fun gloating at her. Of course, Dala, with the jig up, is free to be openly contemptuous, even when Janeway threatens to turn her over to the authorities of one of her victims.
The Telsian criminal justice system is rather barbaric.
Tell her about the prisons.
Barely habitable.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Inmates often die of malnutrition before they are brought to trial. Torture is commonplace, as is disease, including several incurable forms of psoriasis.
I think even Harry would see through that, Tuvok. Then again, Vulcans are noted for not lying normally, so the fact that he managed it without a lot of ums in there is commendable in its own way. Janeway offers to give Dala safe passage out of the sector if she makes full restitution to her victims. Dala doesn't seem to want to do that, so Janeway will need a new strategy, one that can work with someone who inherently lacks trust because her life is all about exploiting that. Neelix stops by with dinner. I see this is the torture that Tuvok was talking about. I also brought my speculum if you have a problem with your angina, ma'am. He starts talking with her about stuff like living this kind of life, do unto others as you expect they'll do unto you, so do it first. Robin Berger gave us 2 other Voyager episodes, Fairhaven, yeah, and the script for Memorial, double yeah. So I was a little surprised at her approach to Neelix here. She passed the events of the first season through a filter and interpreted him based upon the guy that we saw in the pilot, the one who conned them into rescuing his girlfriend and then took all the credit for it, saying that what he had really been doing all that time when he had joined the crew was looking for a way to take advantage of the situation, but in time came around to their way of thinking. I have seen on a few instances of Neelix being in some way useful, but this is, I have to admit, the first time that I have ever, in the 18 years of reviewing Voyager in any form that I've done, seen anything to shed a nuanced light on the character. For once, he doesn't seem like a shithead. And we're back. Now ask yourself, are you even slightly surprised that Neelix would think to bring a weapon into the cell with the prisoner? A precaution to take when you are worried of being attacked, which is the opposite of sitting next to them and turning your back to them. And what's worse, that Voyager's security actually allowed that, and while leaving the force field to the cell down. This is such an incredibly common example of security failing at all to secure anything. It doesn't even trump the time that the 2 unarmed Ferengi spoiled Voyager's plan to get home because the security personnel are that laughably awful. So with Dala making her escape in the real Delta Flyer, the only justifiable explanation for this impressive yet oh so consistent incompetence comes. They wanted her to escape to track her back to her ship. Now I know what you might be saying. Well, Chuck, then by your own admission, your entire rant was pointless, wasn't it? Au contraire. My entire point is that this is so consistent with past behavior, the audience is expected to accept it. The audience is supposed to believe that Voyager has the most incompetent security in the entire galaxy. When the writers were asking themselves, is this something the audience will accept? The answer was, with this bunch of dipshits, of course. So, back at the ship, the 2 are arguing over her. Fake Tuvok is naturally loyal to fake Janeway, while the other guy is more pragmatic, not to mention suspicious when she shows up. Tom and the Doctor were actually hidden down below, so they hitched a ride with Dala, who naturally is ready to collect their goods and leave the sector while the going is still good. The Delta Flyer is soon spotted following them once she's beamed over, but it looks like they managed to get away and reach their stash undetected. But there's tension between Dala and man number 3, justified when she turns on them and is ready to beam the stuff up to Voyager. In reality, she's the Doctor disguised as Dala. They'd tried something on a smaller scale with blink of an eye, so this is a fairly reasonable extension. Man number 3 is taken out, leaving just fake Tuvok and the real Tuvok, the former being a bit awestruck at being in the presence of the latter. And naturally should, since Tuvok manages to outwit and then shoot him. Hey, how many fans would have begged Nimoy to actually knock them out with a Vulcan nerve pinch, after all? So everything's restored, the bad guys are locked away, and together, Neelix and Paris manage to fool the Doctor. Happy ending. Post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix moment is again wrecking the ship doing something ill-advised. Once is bad. Twice is unforgivable. 3 times is, how exactly are you blackmailing the captain into letting you stay? All scores are relative to the series, so compared to the rest of Voyager, Live Fast and Prosper gets a score of 8 out of 10. It's an amusing bit of satire at its own expense that occasionally leans against but never breaks the fourth wall. After 3 mediocre or awful tales, Robin Berger also did The Hunted, this was a nice episode to finish on. The only thing I really disapprove of is the mobile emitter being hidden. I think it would have been better if it was on the back of his head. We see Dala without her wig on the Delta Flyer, so taking it to cover up the mobile emitter would have fit perfectly with the scene. But really, that's about it. This was a surprisingly enjoyable episode. hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.